Let's bring in Republican Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Sir, it's tempting to focus in all this on how this combustible economic picture is going to play out in the midterms. But I think the more important thing to drill down on you first here is how this is playing out in the American people's daily lives now, many months into this inflation crisis. I know that in parts of your district, Americans are still now in the wake of the storm without basic electricity services.
Yeah, so we're seeing gas prices tick back up. Biden's strategy, frankly, of reaching out to dictatorships, Venezuela, Iran, which has 50 million barrels that they're trying to sell as part of the Iran deal, and others, it isn't working. And now we have OPEC restricting supply. But the thing that's so frustrating, I think, to all of us is that right here under the ground in the United States of America, we have oil and cleaner gas than Russian gas or others ready to go. Not only would it help Americans at the pump, but it's the biggest driver of inflation because everything has to be transported. But the other piece is on foreign policy. Russia has invaded, Putin has invaded its neighbors every time it was cash flush because of the high price of oil. In 2008 with Georgia, in 2014 with Ukraine, and then again this year when oil was over $100 a barrel. Biden could starve Putin's war machine right now by unleashing oil and gas, and they keep telling this fiction that our oil and gas or domestic oil and gas companies, they keep pointing to these leases that they're supposedly not taking advantage of. It's because the administration isn't giving the permits to actually take advantage of them. So it's misleading the American people. It's hurting the American people in their wallet, and it's keeping Putin cash flush so that he can continue this invasion.
So where you are, the search for survivors is still underway now in the aftermath of the hurricane. At least 84 people are confirmed dead. The majority of those victims are in areas of Florida that have been effectively flattened, decimated. And as the state is looking to recover and rebuild, the governor, Ron DeSantis, is now ringing alarm bells about a whole new challenge. Take a listen to this.
We've had 4 looters that were arrested, I guess a couple days ago, and they need to be brought to justice, and we're not going to tolerate it. But, you know, 3 of the 4 are illegal aliens. They're illegally in our country, and not only that, they try to loot and ransack in the aftermath of a natural disaster.
Well, President Biden is slated to meet with the governor later this afternoon, the two publicly at least setting aside their political differences over the past week to kickstart this much-needed relief effort. Congressman, my question for you is there an aspect or an area of American life now that is not touched by the border crisis?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think we would struggle to find one. When I reach out to veterans who aren't getting the services they need, teachers whose schools are already crowded, hospitals that can't provide all the services that they want to, there is an opportunity cost to American citizens when we have 2 million people a year, and that's not even counting the gotaways that are flowing across our border. That's 8 million people just on Biden's first term that are taking services that others may need and that aren't appropriately getting. So there absolutely is a cost in every aspect of life. I do want to say, I do appreciate the Biden administration giving the major disaster declaration to the counties that need it, but there is going to be a lot of follow-up. It will be from the Department of Agriculture for our crops, Department of Transportation for our infrastructure. There's still going to be a lot of work to do to recover from this storm, and I do expect both of them will set any differences aside, just as they did after the Surfside condo collapse a few years ago.
Well, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, and FEMA's administrator have both tried to clarify and defend the vice president's comments earlier in the week about hurricane relief being based on equity, at least under the Biden administration's approach. Now, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says this. Take a listen.
We've got to make sure that we're helping everybody based on the need that is there, that it's fair, that it's equitable. There are some folks who see politics where it doesn't need to be. In the end, I think you do need to help everybody based on their need. Now, if your vacation home got damaged, that's probably having a different effect on your life than if your only home got damaged.
A Washington Examiner opinion piece out today argues this. Take a look. Kamala Harris's prejudice could dissuade people from seeking needed hurricane aid. First of all, do you agree with that? And second of all, is there room for, addressing the neediest and including equity in the way you roll out these funds? Or do we got to choose?
Yeah, that's the whole problem with viewing the world through the lens of race or through the lens of people's skin color. Number one, this is not the time. We're all coming together as Americans in our communities, as neighbors, and we're helping each other out as fellow citizens. Period. I mean, that really should be the extent of it. And there are rules in place. For example, if you're applying for certain types of aid and you are demonstrating an additional need or you didn't have insurance, then those rules are in place and that'll be taken into account. I think this is virtue signaling at its worst. And it's blowing back on them because it's just exposing this wrong-headed view of the world that the progressive left keeps putting forward, whether it's in our military or whether it's how we help people in the wake of a disaster.
I want to make sure we get into this with you real quick before we let you go. Your Republican colleagues in the House are vowing to investigate Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings even further if they take back control of Congress in November. They say they're still unearthing new texts and emails and evidence of the president's son capitalizing on his father's position back when he was VP. Now Hunter's former business partner is coming forward again. He talked exclusively last night to Tucker Carlson. Take a listen.
Subsequent to the election, he's now the sitting president of the United States, but there are hundreds of data points that Joe Biden was acting in a capitalistic term, I would say the chairman. The chairman serves a purpose, right? He's a figurehead. He shows up at meetings, shakes hands, advises, has faith in his team. Effectively, that was Joe Biden's role in the Biden family business ventures and around the world. And not just my venture. I met with him multiple times.
So that's what Bobulinski says. Take a listen to the president back in 2020 on the campaign trail.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses.
Do you stand by your statement that you did not discuss any of your son's overseas business dealings?
Yes, I stand by that statement.
I should point out that Bobulinski last night, whether you find him credible or not, sir, said that Jim and Hunter Biden stood to profit to the tune of not millions, not tens of millions, but actually hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you make of all this? Yeah,
the Chinese Communist Party have a theory. They have a doctrine that's called elite capture. And that is to capture and basically corrupt key elements of an adversary's society. And when it comes to major political figures, they don't go after the principal, they go after the sons. They call it the princelings. This is absolutely falls in line with that kind of theory from the Chinese Communist Party. We need to get to the bottom of it. We know that Hunter is an equity holder, for example, amongst other things, of a Chinese nuclear suppliers group company that is blacklisted for trying to steal American warhead technology. I mean, there are so many things we have to get to the bottom of, but the thing that's so disturbing is that the FBI did nothing about it. They say they have a non-interference policy in the run-up to election, but doing nothing is also political interference, and that they've done nothing from then until now is further eroding our trust in the FBI and the DOJ.
We got to leave it there, Congressman. Thanks for taking time out for us this morning, and I wish you the best going forward with recovery there in your district and across the entire state, obviously. You bet.